Welcome everyone to this Groundbreak 2021 session. We're here today to talk about why people are inescapable and beneficial in the future of construction deep tech. My name's Giuseppe Cosentino. I'm here from Melbourne, Australia. My business is Amity, and we work as an IT partner for SMEs in Australia. And I'm also here with Dr. Nathan Kirchner from Procore. I'm just going to pop you through here to have a look at our forward-looking statement. Take a moment to read that. And more interestingly, Nathan is the founder and director of Procore. Procore is a super interesting company, spin-off out of Lang O'Rourke, and they specialize in AI. So looking forward to having a conversation with him today about deep tech. I'll hand it over to Nathan to more formally introduce himself.
I don't have very much to say about myself. I think you have said most of it. So I head of robotics at Lang O'Rourke, the big construction company, for a while. Had a project inside that spun out into a vision system for safety and productivity improvement in construction that leverages AI and ML, I guess, hence me being here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you've got a habit of dumbing it down a little bit, but yeah, super interesting stuff. And Nathan's got a really interesting background as well, which got him to where he is. So as we move through today, there's a couple of sessions that we're going to be covering, or a couple of topics that we're going to be covering off. We're looking at what is automation, and I guess even a little bit further, the lay of the land around deep tech. We're going to be looking to demystify that a little bit today and zero in a little bit on AI, ML, and robotics, and more specifically, some examples of that maybe in the construction industry. But moving forward and straight into it, because we are limited time and we're taking like a conversation that could go for hours and we're condensing it today. So listen, for me, deep tech is a term that it's really about businesses that have their livelihood depends on it. Yeah, the technology is integrated at such a level that that's how they define or create competitive advantage. Now, for me, in the SME space, I wonder whether anybody can create that competitive advantage with technology. But from a deep tech point of view today, we're zeroing in on businesses that have fundamentally got their roots in technology, and hence Nathan's here with us today with what he's doing with Procore. So just moving forward through, I guess when it comes to deep tech and when it comes to AI and ML, we're really zeroing in on this idea of automation. And I thought I might just start by expressing today a little bit of an example of automation and, in my quick research where I understand it comes from. And, it goes back, we could probably all argue this, but in my research, it sort of zeroes back to somewhere around about 1883. And the first idea of automation was a thermostat on the outside of a wall that fed through to a red light or a light inside of a boiler room. And when that triggered, the guys inside knew it was time to load up the furnaces. So, this isn't something that's new. It's just something that is maybe new to certain business or certain business verticals. Yeah, where do you sort of see it in place at the moment, Nathan?
Yeah, I completely agree, right? So automation and deep tech's somehow similar. They've been made to people overthink them, overcomplicate them. But in their sheerest sense, automation's about completing a task. We already know what task we want to complete. We know some advantage from completing it a different way, maybe a little bit more productive, maybe a little bit more safe, maybe a little bit less effort. So we have the basic concepts there. We know what we want to do. We know it'd be good to get more for less. And now we have the technology to do it. We've created this word automation, which maybe 50 years ago, like the example you gave, Giuseppe, was actually quite a challenge to do something like that. So we've created this maybe artificial kind of barrier, thinking, it's so hard. But now we've got toddlers with iPads who aren't that scared of doing that kind of level of automation. And all of a sudden, it's just sunk into something we can just leverage to do what we already know we need to do a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit better.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, I think you said something about barriers, and that's hopefully what we're going to get through today with the time that we have, is looking at these barriers that exist. And we believe from our conversations that humans, the whole thing is humanized, but we're also dealing with mindsets and resistors that, well, when we talk about it, it doesn't really make much sense, but we'll get into that today. But we're talking about these resistors where people are worried about, that somebody's going to take my job. It's ironic when you think about it, 200 years ago, or whatever it was, 150 years ago, we've got light bulbs going. We're excited about automation. Yet 150 years on, we're here today with all the tools we could possibly imagine, but we've got some resistors in some areas. But I think we'll dig in today a little bit about what some of those more exciting examples are.
Yeah, I'm seeing the trends of those kind of fears moving along. So there is this initial sticker shock when you come into someone and you say, hey, we could do this a different way. There is this, how much is it going to cost? How much risk are we going to take? How much effort do we really want to do it? What about the jobs? What about the kids? All those kind of things. It is actually quite good being an engineer because it's pretty linear or pretty straightforward to reposition it. So it's like, okay, for a start, one person might find it a bit easier to do their job at the cost of a couple of people with PhDs having something to do, a couple of engineers having something to maintain, a couple of technicians having something to install, and the company being twice as big. So I feel like it will create more jobs. And that guy probably gets a 10-minute break instead of a 7-minute break. So we're going to be okay. That normally helps people kind of calm down a little bit. And then the beautiful thing about automation these days, like you think about, I always go to the phone because it's a great example. In the days it doesn't work or you forget it, life goes on. It's zero footprint. If it's there, it makes things better, makes things easier. But if it didn't switch on that day, oh, well, you just do the job anyway.
When it's done right, it makes life easier. When it's done right. If it's not done right, it can cause headaches, but there's always a trial and error. This slide that's up is a super interesting one. 60% of occupations have at least 30% of their activities that are automatable. So over half of us are in a position where at least 30% of our business could potentially be automated.
And they sound like big numbers, but they disappear into the simple maths of it. So if you think about, I don't know, let's just make up a number. The GDP of Australia is $100 billion. So maybe we could save $30 billion if we could automate it all. Maybe if we just made email a little bit easier to send. Maybe if we made a virtual assistant that you could add a calendar reminder with your phone, we'd save 2%, 3%. 3% of $100 billion is $3 billion. So all of a sudden, it's big returns for not that much complexity.
And I think the bigger the business, then the more opportunity there is for return naturally as well. Notwithstanding that even for SMEs, even for small business, automation's a huge opportunity. But as you said, it's just about understanding that, you don't pick up the whole 30% in once. It's about the 1%ers. And I think there's an opportunity. I always talk platform strategy. There's always the opportunity for businesses to look and understand what's out there to make them automate, whether it's platforms like we're being introduced to this week through Groundbreak, or whether it's something what seems as simple as Teams. And Teams is something that I've been working with for 7 years, long before COVID, but leveraging that 365 ecosystem brings in something like Microsoft Power Automate, which is a simple tool that's there. There's subscriptions paid for, and you can do everything from have an email that's coming in one place to post into Teams, or run an automation to notify somebody else. There's opportunity. I think it's just about identifying where the low-hanging fruits are sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's it. And so I get faced a lot of this. So I'm actually a director of Robotics Australia, so I do a lot of talking to big companies and as well as SMEs. And the value proposition is a little bit different, like you're saying. So sure, if you're a big company and you're flipping $10 billion a year, then saving 2% of a process is a couple of bucks. If you're an SME, that doesn't make sense. But the value proposition just swaps. The next one on the list is the democratization of effort, of information, of workflow. So as soon as you're an SME and you say, look, if you embrace this deep tech, if you embrace this technology, if you embrace this way to work, if you embrace this automation, when you want to plug into a big company or the next company or the next step in the supply chain, it's now invisible.
Or the next step in scale, right? For small businesses, the hardest thing to do is to scale, to get that right. There's a people problem, but there's also the ability to scale. I have conversations with people around the idea of not CCing in emails, but create a channel inside of your Teams environment or Slack or whatever it is you use, and use that as a way to collaborate, because there's ways to work more efficiently with the technology that it's hand. And I'm obviously going to keep bringing it back to an SME focus, but on the other end, when we create these opportunities to automate in a $10 billion company, well, the returns are a no-brainer. So if we're dealing with, the thing is, when you're dealing with decision makers, if they've got natural resistors to change, well, guess what? That's human. That's normal. But I think the idea is to be able to help find out where the technology can actually close the gap on the business, and also understand that humans are part of that. You touched on it before, this idea of, maybe my job's going to go, or that's going to change. I think, your traditional fitter and turner might be replaced with a machine, but that machine needs to be controlled. And the kids coming up through school, they hear AI, ML, they get excited. That's where we're going. And I think there's so much job opportunity in all of that.
And you've got the number on the screen, right? So 60% of occupations have at least 30% of their activities automatable. So who loses their job? No one. We didn't automate 100% of anyone.
I so don't think this is a job loss scenario. I think this is probably more of a rapid change. People think, but we talked about it. It's been going on for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 200 years. But there's probably maybe a slightly more rapid change coming for those that aren't prepared to shift or to evolve. And I know that sounds harsh, and I'm sorry, but change is the only constant in my world. And to that end, we've got an appetite for it. My team has an appetite for it. Our customers have an appetite for it. And you know what? The construction industry, the technology in the construction industry is now starting to feed into that appetite. And like always, we've got the Lang O'Rourke's of the world that are committing to it, which is fantastic, and we need that. I think there's opportunity now coming for the smaller businesses to take this up as well. And it doesn't have to be the big change. It doesn't mean you need a robot out there laying bricks for you, but it does mean that you should really be questioning yourself long and hard around why you've got a paper process if you still do.
I think for me, a really important facet of that is to probably make it even harder. So the change is non-negotiable. So in a couple of years, the kids coming through school now aren't going to do it the old way. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to know about the old way. They're not going to believe it, and not going to accept doing it. So it's like, can you do this on paper? They'll be like, no, I can't do it on paper. No, give me an iPad. So I'm not even sure if resisting a change would be a great idea. And I think probably a good example in the construction space of just this, it's from Lang O'Rourke. So I'll give you the very short version, building a very big highway was going to disrupt lots of traffic over lots of time to build a big bridge. They completely built it, completely assembled it, completely did the fit, completely refined everything and improved the design, all in the digital world, all in BIM. Placed that however many times they needed to place it to be confident. Then once they had worked out the compromise between what could actually be built and how it could actually be put into where it needed to be put in, they made the refinements or adjustments on the bridge off to the side of the highway, which was still open, and then used SMPTs, automated carriers, to put it into place, fit it. They managed to put a 180 metre bridge in overnight. And I think the biggest thing was, on the never done it before side of the hill, it was terrifying. Like, oh my God, this will never work. This is so much risk. We've always done it the other way. We've got this big contract with this government to build a road. What if we get it wrong? Oh my God. Oh, it's so terrifying. So much risk, so much adversity. Luckily, the appetite in business has changed to take on those things and actually, try them. But the key point is, after the change, business as usual. That's just how we do it now. We've proven it. Now we understand that. We're comfortable with that. We've proven that we can leverage the benefit from doing it. That's just how we do it.
That's so reassuring to hear. And, apart from the initial expense to get going, again, I think it's something really for bigger businesses potentially at the moment. But everything that I've heard around BIM has been, amazing, like really amazing. And I think for me, if I was owning a construction company, I'd be like, how do I do that? How do I get it right on paper before going through all the expense and heartache out on site? That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. And our next slide goes into, or this slide here goes into a few different areas, I guess, what we identified with the trends in technology. And I think we've pretty much so covered off everything from gaming to random part design through to, artificial intelligence, obviously. So there's a bit there, but I thought I might share one that's a little bit left of center with a customer that we've been working with for a long time, and I've seen their business transform. So we've got one of our customers has got what they recently fitted in is what's the sort of largest egg grading machine of the type. So they operate in free range eggs. They produce free range eggs, and you can probably think about all that in what it looks like from the smaller groups, small farms running a single farm operation to something like this, which is a 12 farm operation. And the eggs come in and they come in on a grader, and then they start to move through what's called the grading process, if you like. And that involves grabbing the eggs and cleaning the eggs and, a few other things. But I thought what I'd share with you is the scanning of the eggs and checking those eggs as they come through. So they move through at quite a fast pace. There's no stop. But I believe the floor has the capacity to do about 800,000 eggs a day on a good day, maybe a bit more. But more specifically, as each egg comes through, it comes through on a conveyor belt and it's scanned. It's scanned for its integrity of the shell and other things. And that scan happens each egg 1,000 times within a second. And it's that, for me, like I see that, and this is in something like farming, something like food produce, chickens and free range eggs. But to see that sort of application of technology and still to walk in and see that there's people on the floor, there's people that operate these machines, and there's people we've got fitters and turners, we've got people that are working with barcoding and scanning, and they've got a wrench in their hand. But we've also got people that are working with the software side of it. And then we've got people that are naturally on the floor as pickers and packers. So you see, this amazing technology enables the business and whatever else to do what it's doing, but there's still people all around it. It still requires people. Yeah, there's some examples out there. I don't know if you've got any other you want to share, but there's every time I think of something, it's great, but it's surrounded by people.
Also, I think that's probably the biggest point. So we have what's commonly considered the trends, and they'll have all the, what I probably call it buzzwords: AI, AR, blockchain, drones, IoT, robotics, VR, 3D printing. And they're all definite themes of a tool realization. But the trend is much bigger than that. The trend is about capabilities, catalysts. So like your egg scanning example. So the most bandwidth we can get from the way we do it this way is maybe 100 an hour. But now we use this other tool and we can do 1,000 an hour. So the capability hasn't changed. The process or the workflow hasn't changed. The task hasn't changed. Just our ability to do it faster and bigger has changed.
High quality, high safety, high productivity, higher efficiency, higher effectiveness.
And I think a big part of that is the ability that technology gives us to dislocate the point of information gathering from the point of interpretation and the point of action or decision making.
So you say the technology breaks those apart versus having them bound together traditionally?
It lets us separate them. So yeah, sure, breaks them apart. But we might have, in your case with the egg scanning, maybe some AI for some sensing and perception. Maybe some VR so people can look in a virtual world how it's packed. I'm not really sure of the details. You don't have to be at the machine to look at the product of the machine. So what do you want to call that? You want to call that productivity because you don't have to slide the machine down because the person's around. Do you want to call it safety because you don't need to be near the machine? Do you want to call that efficiency? It's kind of all of it, right? So the big trend is we can use technology to separate these things, to do capability catalysts, to get all these other gains, and it still ends up with the person being the one involved.
Yeah, awesome. The power of technology, right? It's so exciting. And I love the way you just, like that analogy to say, we've got data input here and we're doing something over here, but then we can break away from it and use VR over here. And it's sort of like now we've got these data sets that we can do different things with through different technologies. But yeah, as you said, we can talk about the hot terms and whatnot, but when it comes to the trends are more the macro stuff. They're the shifts in patterns that we're seeing with the same input but a different level of output. So I'm going to jump us into our next slide. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. I said we'd demystify this stuff, so I'd like to zero in on this. But, again, I really want to ask you this question. AI, artificial intelligence, ML, machine learning, what's your take on, are they the same or are they different? And where's the definitive?
I can't help but make analogies that are probably a bit clumsy and are probably a bit brutal, but I think it makes it simple. So AI is really like a machine, right? So maybe you think about it as the car. It's the machine that does something. It's the mechanism that lets a process happen. And ML is learning. It's how someone learns how to do it. So maybe if you put in a race car scenario, AI would be the race car, and ML would be Lewis Hamilton, who started off as a 10-year-old in a go-kart and learnt and eventually became a really good operator. I don't know. What do you want to do? Do you want to say the F1 race team is the car and the driver? So it's AI and ML. Or do you want to say they're separate things? Well, one doesn't really exist without the other.
Well, can you have one before the other? Can you have AI before you've got ML, or do you have to have ML before AI? Or are they not? Or they don't? You don't see it like that?
No, I do, and I don't find there being much use in being overly semantic, right? So go back to your example of the thermostat. That's artificial intelligence. So the bit of information was gathered, something artificial, not a person, made a decision on it. And maybe machine learning there wasn't automated. Maybe the machine didn't learn for itself. Maybe the person had to go and adjust something and do a manual pass of the machine learning. Maybe later there was two thermostats, one really, really outside for ambient temperature, and one in the monitoring zone. And then there we go. The machine can learn for itself when it really should say yes or no. So maybe that's over the line. Maybe I've jumped over the line, and that's no longer AI and ML for a Puritan. But you got to get the concept of we can get some aspect in it somewhere.
Yeah. So, and that's important. I think so. Everybody, I'm sure, now understands the acronyms, and there's a difference in there. But as you heard the doctor say himself, we've had AI since 1883, apparently. So here's the thing: this is the demystifying of it. Really, what we're talking about. And I'm going to have a crack at this as somebody that's more in smaller business, but pretty passionate about it. We have to just bring it back to the fact that we're talking about algorithms here. And we're talking about a very basic algorithm that says that I'm going to look at a picture, and if that object is walking across, it's something. So the computer can notice at the pixel level, it identifies the contrast and the shapes, and it goes, okay, that's something. Then it requires, funnily enough, humans again, to come back in and start to program that and start to tell that what it means.
Yeah, you've got this one right, you've got that one wrong, try again, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's just a yes or no, A and B. I mean, I know it's much more than it, but I can't help bring this whole thing back to ones and zeros, right?
It's not. That's the thing that stresses me out so much, because you talk to the person that's not faced with this thing day by day, and inevitably, or maybe time's moved on a bit, inevitably they say, the Terminator's going to kill us all and Skynet will take over the world. There's a couple of issues with that. Robots still can't go upstairs, so we're going to be okay. If you see a robot coming, go up a single step and you're safe. The other thing is there's many different shades of AI before we get to Skynet. Maybe Siri on your phone is a good example of something that Skynet like, but not quite at the kill the entire human race level. Other thing is it's just a tool that we're going to use. Who makes tools? Tool builders. Who are tool builders? People like me. You think, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to make a robot that takes over the world and hopefully it kills me. No, I think, gee, it's not much fun to do that job. I wish something did it for me. And then someone comes along and goes, can't you make this AI cognizant take over the world? I'm like, well, why would I do that? I'm not interested in doing that. I'd rather do this other thing, which is actually practically useful.
Exactly. And I think that, from the top level, if there's investment coming into it, I think that the investment that either Lang O'Rourke are making, or that society in general, or business, or Procore, or otherwise, I think that investment has to be tangible back. Now, somebody might sit there and say, well, there's no bigger investment than taking over the world. But listen, I'll be honest with you, 20 years in tech, I'm yet to meet somebody that wants to take over the world. There's plenty of us that wouldn't mind trying to figure out how to take over our own patch, but I'm not sure we're there. But hey, listen, you know what? If the wars of AI ever come, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to see if I can finally get in touch with Boston Dynamics. I'm going to call you. And between the two of you, I should be able to figure out what to do next, right?
Look at that highlight reels of how many times they have a failure, and they give you a sense of stepping up a single step. You should be okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I think we've just got a slide up here, which is maybe just taking some of the stuff we spoke earlier around those numbers. But I might hand it over to you to talk us through this slide a little, Nathan.
This one's I find very kind of easy. So really, we start to worry about things when people say stuff like low-hanging fruit. We start to worry about things like money, but the numbers in this game are just ridiculous. It's astronomical. So you think about just construction in just Australia, we have over 1 million workers. So it's one of the big GDPs in Australia. It's really interesting because if you contrast, I like to play with construction, mining and manufacturing because they're all in different phases of automation. So maybe manufacturing's got a lot of robotics, maybe mining's got autonomous vehicles, but construction is still not there yet. You look at the workforces and you look at the productivity cost there, the M's produce more for less. So the money's there, the GDP is there, the desire is there, construction's right to take advantage or to leverage or to get something out of it. It then moves on very, very, I would say quite simply, right? So we know what we need to do. We're already spending time and money and effort to do it. It's really not a challenge. We know what to do. We know we're okay at doing it. We know the tasks have been simplified down to being trivial. Why wouldn't we want to do it better? Why wouldn't we want to do it easier? It's the equation's known. All we need to do is find the calculator. When we jump into the last box, and it just becomes ludicrous. We're spending something like 7 trillion with the T. I don't even know how many zeros that's got anymore. Too many zeros, right? We're spending that 7 trillion on wages. What if we made it a couple of percent more productivity, increased productivity by a couple of percent, made it more efficient, more effective, had less issues with QA, less issues with QC? Maybe we just made people like their jobs a little bit better. I definitely would feel better at the end of the day if I'd accomplished more and took less effort and everyone around me was happier. If automation's the key to that, then that's going to make me as a person feel better. The business owner who gets a 2% or 3% increase on $7 trillion worth of cost is going to probably or hopefully have a better calculator than me and just think, wow, that was worth it. So in grand circular summary, I think the key point is we're too stressed out about trying to find the absolute perfect solution, and we should be going kind of back and thinking, like we said before, a big chunk of us spend a lot of time doing stuff that could be easily automated. Why would we do that? There's lots of zeros to chase.
Yeah.
The change is overdue. The change is overdue, and the costs are known. The risks are imaginary. We've got to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's go or get left behind because, I think, I don't know, we've got here in the conclusion, the touch on the automation, we're looking at the land of milk and honey, and I want to come back to that, but consider change as incremental. That's probably the huge part. Nobody in my life, I've never said to somebody, hey, let's look at this massive transformation in 1 month. Let's look at where we think we want to be and what's available and start to stage it out. But always one step at a time gets us to the land of milk and honey. But I would say, I don't know if we need to get to the land of milk and honey. We might be there right now. We just need to decide to make that milkshake together. That's all.
Maybe look up. Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed. Hey, mate, thank you for today. I think that rounds up our session. I don't know about you, but this is my first time with Groundbreak as a speaker. It's been super fun. I'm very privileged to be here. Thanks to all the Procore guys. But as always, thanks for talking with me. It's super interesting, Nathan.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I had so much fun talking to you, and thanks to everyone at Procore and everyone else that's listening.
Yeah, and hope everybody has a great ground break for the rest of the year. And fingers crossed we can see each other in person next time. Take it easy. Thank you.